So I think Georgia earned some wins and some losses. Now, not wins and losses when you look at the schedule, but we are looking at the schedule. I'm talking about these game times, these kickoffs. I think that in these announcements, there have been some wins and there have been some losses. Now, I think there have been more wins than losses, and you'll get to my point. I'll get to it right now. The Auburn game that Georgia goes on the road is going to be at night. And to me, that's a loss. Now, I'm not saying that Georgia's going to lose that game. That's not what I mean by that. I just mean that that makes it more difficult. I think that the 3:30 kickoff time that's been set for Georgia's road game against Tennessee in September is a win, right? Like, I think that that's a win that doesn't end up being a night game, that ends up being a 3:30 kick. I think that for Georgia's other road game, Georgia only has 3 true road games, everybody, and that's kind of another win in itself. But the road game against Mississippi State, that's at noon. I think that that's a win, right? I've been out there for a night game, and if that's as rowdy as it gets out there, then it being at noon, I think bodes even better for Georgia in terms of fighting off a tough environment. Georgia getting a night game against Alabama in Sanford Stadium, that's a win, right? So like when I look at these things, I'm look at them as, look, the time of the day matters. People get crazier for night games, generally speaking. I've seen some really good noon environments. I've seen some great 3:30 environments, but they do not compare to night football environments, and they do not compare to night football environments in a place where it's already pretty hostile. And that's what you get at these top-end SEC programs. So just to break it back down, and we'll get into the details of it, Auburn being a night game, which the time hasn't been set, but they said it's going to be at night, down in the plains. I think that that's kind of Georgia's biggest loss in terms of the scheduling. And I think having these other road games be at noon and 3:30, and having home night game against Alabama, and what is certainly going to be a home night game against Texas most likely, I think that those are kind of the minor wins that you look ahead at and say, it's really good that that happened for Georgia. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about game times, kickoff times for the Georgia Bulldogs this season. Look, as I've been on the phone with friends and people over the last couple of weeks, and the thing that seems to be the most common among everybody is the excitement for this college football season is through the roof. Now, I think the more casual college football fan or the fans that are a little bit more upset with all the changes, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of all of the changes that are happening in college football. I'm not a fan of this potential expanded playoff again where it's going to be more teams and the automatic qualifiers. There are things that I'm not happy about with this sport, but what I can tell you I'm happy about is the matchups for this coming football season are great. The hype among the stars that we're going to see in college football this season is growing, and I just think it's going to be a really entertaining one. If you don't think that the 2024 college football season is entertaining, I don't know what you're watching, but I think 2025 is shaping up to be another very exciting year for college football. And look, at the end of the day, Georgia's going to be in a handful of these games where the entire country is going to be watching. So let's talk about that Auburn game. Georgia at Auburn. That's going to be October 11th. So what, we're week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably week 7. I think Georgia has a bye, so about week 7, right, in the middle of the regular season. Georgia would have already gone through a road test at Tennessee. So maybe I should be talking about that one first, but I want to discuss this Auburn game. Look, I've been to Jordan-Hare Stadium, and they pronounce it Jordan, not Jordan. And it is one of the best environments that I've been a part of in college football. And it's definitely, when you see people making these lists, it's definitely one of the best environments in general. Holds not quite 90,000, but those fans are pretty loud for the entire game. And as you know, crazy things happen in that stadium. Kick six, prayer Jordan-Hare, just wacky things. Now, they lose, right? Didn't they lose to UMass, and they lost to another program that it should have beaten at home? So Auburn's not perfect at home, and no team is really perfect at home outside of Georgia in the last few years. But that crowd puts on a show. And the expectation out of many is that Auburn is going to be a ranked football team this year, that Jackson Arnold is an upgraded quarterback, the Oklahoma transfer, that they brought in Eric Singleton. In many people's eyes, the top wide receiver in the transfer portal, going from Georgia Tech to Auburn. So they're trying to bolster their offense. They have Cam Coleman at wide receiver, going through a running back transition this year with Jarquez Hunter out the door to the NFL. Another year, Hugh Freeze. Expectations are that Auburn takes a step forward this coming season, and that hope, look, it makes these environments bigger. Georgia will almost certainly be the better team and the higher-ranked team heading into that game. I haven't been to an Auburn game at night. I've only been to two 3:30 Eastern time kickoffs, and they were rowdy. You know what? That's actually not true. I have been to an Auburn game at night, but it was not against an SEC program. It was against Arkansas State. But Auburn, that crowd is legit, and it being at night, to me, that's a minor loss. Georgia might not lose that game, but that's going to be a very, very difficult one for the Dogs. I tried to rank the most difficult games for Georgia this coming season. I tried to do that, and that's something that you can go find over at dogpost.com. Again, make sure you are checking out the website and checking out all the content that Matt, Dean, and myself are putting out there. But that's a piece that I wrote a couple of weeks ago, so go look it up on Dawg Post. And I was talking about how I ranked the games I thought were in difficulty. I ranked Georgia's games in order of difficulty. And now that Auburn's is at night, now that the Auburn matchup is slated for night, and some of these times have changed, I partially want to shift them around. Now, at the end of the day, the time of the day is not the biggest factor in a game, but it certainly matters in terms of atmosphere. And if you've been to a night game and you've been to a game during the day, then you know what the difference is. So another win, right, that I talked about a little bit more extensively in another video. I'll hit on it real quick. At Tennessee, I think avoiding a night game up there is big, and it kicking at 3:30 matters. And then Mississippi State, I've been to a night game in Mississippi State, and I think that it gets loud in there, and they got their cowls and everything. It's not the loudest stadium. It's a smaller SEC stadium, but it being at noon, I can't imagine that crowd is as top tier as it gets for a Mississippi State crowd, Davis Wade Stadium. I just can't imagine it's going to be as rowdy as it could be. Now, the biggest home wins, and Texas hasn't been announced, but if it's not a 7:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff, I'd be quite surprised. Hosting Alabama at 7:30, the Texas game may end up being bigger, but it's later in the season. When the Alabama game happens, September 27th in Sanford Stadium this year, at the time that happens, that is going to be considered the biggest home game in Georgia football history. Texas will have an opportunity to top it when we get to November, but as of September 27th, Georgia would have played its biggest home game in history on that night, and that's hosting the Alabama Crimson Tide at 7:30. The matchups are always dramatic between these teams. It was dramatic last year, a night game at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. Georgia hasn't played Alabama since 2015 at home. Just hasn't happened. Haven't played Alabama at home since Kirby Smart's taken over. This is Georgia's first chance at that. Georgia fans hate Alabama. It's just a fact. Alabama has broken Georgia's hearts over and over again over the last handful of seasons and in big-time games and championship games. And this is a chance for Georgia to get another win in that column when Alabama's been beating Georgia over and over outside of that one national championship. So I think that being a night game, I think that's a big win for the university. I think it's going to be huge even if it was at 3:30 or noon. People are going to treat it like it's a big game, but it being a night, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be the best environment in Georgia football history. That's my hot take. And maybe I should talk about that a little bit more extensively in another video, but that's going to be top tier. And so getting what is probably going to be multiple home night games against top 10 programs this coming season, to me, that is a major win for the Georgia Bulldogs football program. But specifically, the road games, I think you get one L with Auburn at night. Not necessarily an L for the schedule, but an L in terms of the context of it. And I think you get a little bit of a win with the 3:30 kick up in Neyland, the two most difficult road games for Georgia this season. Do you agree with what I have to say there? Let me know in the comments down below. Appreciate you watching.